Have you done the homework to understand what enough is to you? What it looks like? What it feels like? What the number is in terms of your finances? The level of luxury or quality that you need in your experiences? The kinds of experiences that you need? The quantity of assets that you have to own or attain? What relationships you need? Because it goes beyond a number, though a number is a really important starting point. Because so often, not just because we think we need it, but because our society constantly tells us we need to make more, we need to buy more, we need to own more. From a car to a house to all the savings you have to put away for all the things that you're going to have to buy in the future, whether it's kids' college educations, retirement funds. This notion of what this number is constantly ingrained in us. To chase more, to make 100,000, 200,000, 500,000, a million a year. There are some people that I've heard who are, influencers who are popular in different realms, who are financial experts. And when they're asked, what is their fuck you number or retirement number? It's something insane, like $25 million. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't want $25 million, because every single one of us would want $25 million. But the discussion around enough, you figuring out what your enough is an entirely different conversation. Not because you have to live at your lowest level of expense, but because each of us should inherently understand what we need at a bare minimum for our lives to feel solid. There's that study that's been cited over and over and over again about how there is marginal happiness beyond a certain number. And years ago, that number was $70,000. But adjust for inflation, adjust for, modern day, adjust for cost of living, depending on where you are, maybe that number is $100,000. Maybe that number is $60,000, depending on where you are in the world and what life you live. But whatever that number is, it's pretty fucking low compared to what we think we need to make. And when we currently live in a world where people make hundreds of thousands of dollars, and there are headlines about millennials or Gen Z making hundreds of thousands of dollars, $200,000 or $250,000, and still feeling like they're poor, it's insanity. Because if you actually break down, again, to get to the number, it's a calculation. What do you need to spend money on every month, every year, so that life feels solid, so that you are joyful, so that you are not restricting your survival and you're able to, enjoy life, but not in an overly consumptive way such that it's wasteful? Knowing that number creates so much freedom. And most people think they have to just make more in order to create financial freedom and more time freedom, more mental freedom. And I want to make more money than I currently do. But what I've done over the last few years is reduce my expenses, is reduce what I buy, is cut out things that I know I don't fundamentally need, and not allow myself the lifestyle creep that so many of us allow to happen. Because eventually, if I allow that to creep, I'm going to have to maintain that. And when I make a lot more money than I currently do, the point is not so I can then expand my lifestyle, which is what so often people think it is. And I did this in my late 20s and early 30s when I started to make more money. Where I'm like, oh, I can buy more things. I can stay in nicer hotels. I can buy nicer plane tickets or plane class tickets. I can go to more places. I can pay for more experiences. I can pay for nicer meals. And what you find through empirical experience is exactly what that study says. Is that after a while, there's only marginal incremental improvements on your happiness. Oftentimes, what happens is you start to take for granted all the things that you now can afford and now can enjoy that you couldn't before, that a few years ago, younger you would have killed to enjoy, would have been like, oh my God, life would be set if I could have these things. But yet you now have them and you take them for granted. We all so easily can acclimate to a new baseline of living, such that we forget how much we've improved our lives. And so the point of reduction, and I know some people do this from living a minimalist life, and that's the pursuit of minimalism, and there's a lot of, connecting and overlapping principles, but I didn't pursue minimalism per se. I just thought, how can I only spend money on the things that I fundamentally need so that I can ensure that I have extra money for the things that I really want? That I don't allow my sense of need to creep. I cook meals at home. I barely order takeout because those things I know don't bring me a ton of satisfaction, even if it is easier and more convenient, even if I can afford it. Because I would much rather, what I'm doing now is I swapped homes with a friend who lives in Barcelona, so I'm in their home in Barcelona. And I'd much rather be able to then be like, cool, I'm in Barcelona for a couple weeks. I don't have my normal amenities at home that I'm used to having. I'm not going to cook at home as much. So I'm going to eat out a lot more because I'm in Barcelona. I might go take a flying lesson. There's a really cool thing that someone told me about. I'm like, cool, I can now go pay for that. I want to pay for experiences. I want to pay for exposure. I want to pay for adventure. I know those things will bring me massively more joy than marginal incremental happinesses in my day-to-day. I also know my day-to-day, getting a cookie is going to feel really good. I don't need the 3-course, 5-course, 7-course meal. I barely do that anymore. And I'm someone who used to be a pretty massive fucking foodie, to the point where all my friends would come to me for food guidance, and I barely eat out anymore. So understanding what your numbers are for enough not only give you a guide for understanding what you don't need in your life so that you can save that money and resources for things you really want, but it also helps you understand what your joy really comes from. A lot of us talk about wanting to live in joy, wanting to live in peace, but peace and joy are rooted in a deep understanding of what our contentment requires. And there are plenty of studies to show this, but we don't need studies to tell us what humanity has known for centuries and eons, is that contentment comes from the basic things, comes from the simplest things. It comes from our relationships. It comes from being able to put food on the table and not stress about our daily survival, needs and shelter and clothing. It comes from being outside, being in nature, moving our bodies. It comes from engaging in activities and hobbies that we enjoy. It comes from feeling like our life is meaningful, that we do, our actions and our life aligns to some sense of purpose. These are all things that we've known since the philosophers of way back when started to ask questions about what makes a meaningful life. And yet, so many of us don't live it. And while enough can start with a calculation, you can only really do that calculation well if you've really considered what brings you true joy in your life. What brings meaning and fulfillment? And what do you actually need to pay for to get that? Because do you need all the streaming subscriptions? Absolutely not. Do you need to eat out as often as you do? Probably not. Do you need to buy as much clothing and accessories and just stuff and toys as you do? Probably not. Do you need to buy like every snack you crave? No. Do you need to buy the beverage every time you walk by, like, a deli? Probably not. Like, these are all things that each of us will have to decide for ourselves, like what makes sense to reduce in our lives. But first and foremost, the question is like, what do you need to be happy? What brings you true joy? And which of those things require money? I've had this conversation so much with people recently that I made a calculator. I literally made a whole spreadsheet with formulas and entry cells for you to fill in like what enough looks like financially. But in doing that exercise, it's also a reflection on how much you're currently spending on things you likely don't need, and having a really honest conversation with yourself about what's truly required. And so I'll link it below because I'd love for more people to do this exercise. I'd love for more of us to spend less money with corporations that just want us to consume more. I'd love for more of us to feel like we can secure our financial futures, to save more, to only spend on the things we need to spend and not buy into this consumerist consumption culture, to feel like we have enough, and to live within our means, to not allow our lifestyle to creep just because we made a little bit more money this month or this quarter or this year. Doesn't mean we shouldn't have wants. Doesn't mean we can't have the things that could bring us massively incremental joy, like that trip, like those flight lessons that I want to take. But it's about understanding what will be truly additive to your life and what will bring you more meaning and more fulfillment that's still within your means. Because way too many of us live outside of our means right now. Way too many of us have allowed our lifestyles to creep far beyond what it should be. And that is true of people who make $100K a year, $50K a year, or $1 million a year. Because there are people who I know that make millions a year and still feel like they're cash strapped, which is crazy. Which all that says to me is that you're not managing your money and your lifestyle properly. That you've allowed your needs you've allowed your wants to creep far past what you actually need to be spending. And that you don't really understand what true joy entails for you. Because most people want more time. Most people want to be able to do more with their life. Most people want to not feel chained to their work or their business. And while making more money is part of the equation that is already talked about ad nauseum, the part that isn't is what is enough. So that you can create that much more savings if you make incrementally more and you spend incrementally less.